Tonight at Cuff Docs, we're joined by Tony Massel, who is at Cuff Docs with his film Frank and the Wonder Cat. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So how about we start with you giving a quick synopsis of what your film's about?
Sure. Frank and the Wonder Cat is a feature documentary that I made with my co-director Pablo Alvarez Mesa, and it follows Frank, who's 80 years old now, and it's about the relationship that he had with his kind of costume-wearing, performing pet cat, Pudgy Wudgy. And in the 90s, Frank trained Pudgy to do tricks and wear a lot of different costumes, and they toured high schools and elementary schools, kind of sports events, tailgate parties, that kind of thing. Ended up on news programs, kind of built up to Maury Povich, David Letterman. Anyways, they got as big as like a pet cat could get, and it's kind of about their story together, their relationship, what Pudgy Wudgy meant to Frank, and kind of about Frank's life and his family history and how they all intertwine together.
Great, yeah. And so how did you come to learn about Frank Furco?
We had a friend in Pittsburgh who's a librarian, Stephanie, and she kind of always on Facebook talks about interesting people that show up into the library and talk to her, and Frank was one of these people. He's kind of a local legend. And so one day she was just talking about Frank and Pudgy Wudgy, and somebody suggested maybe somebody should make a documentary about them, and Pablo had no idea what Pudgy Wudgy was, but said, maybe you should look into it. So he gave me a call, and we asked for some footage or something of the cat, and we got sent this 2-hour compilation DVD that Frank had made. He filmed everything his whole life, so we had hours and hours of archive footage, and he had personally kind of edited VCR to VCR a compilation of all their footage. And so we got sent this, and it's just like it was a wild ride to sit there and watch like 2 hours of this footage, and some of it repeated and it went backwards, and the colors were like beautiful and strange, and because with VHS, the more you record over it or the more you use it, it gets a little crazy. So we watched this footage and we're like totally enamored with it, and thought that was enough for us to like jump in a car and head down to meet Frank. And so we met him and spent a week with him on the first trip. And then as we went back over a few years, we kind of got to know more and more about his life and his family, and he showed us more archives, and it was kind of, a deepening of his character beyond Pudgy Wudgy the cat, and we started learning about his family and different emotional kind of aspects of his life that kind of drew us into the story.
Yeah, and how did you determine what aspects of his life you did want to bring in? I've heard some other interviews you've done, and you've mentioned things that weren't in the film. I'm wondering, what was it about where you did include the film that you thought really resonated with the story you were trying to tell?
Yeah, we had a lot of footage, and over about 4 years we were making it. It went through many different kind of iterations, as any documentary kind of does. And by the end, we wanted to focus on the relationship between Frank, Pudgy Wudgy, and Frank's father. And we felt like the three of them together kind of created a full story, an emotional kind of family story that we thought would resonate with people. I think that we kind of knew the limitations of just a film about a cat that wears costumes and does tricks. Yeah. As much as that's fun and it's like entertaining for about 10 minutes maybe, or maybe 3 minutes, who knows, you need something else to kind of pull people through and be able to connect to on a human level. So that's why we kind of figured out that the relationship between the three of those characters was important to us, and that we connected to personally as people, human beings with families, So it was nice to, once we figured that out, it was a streamlining, and then we could kind of, even though there were a lot of other interesting things about Frank's life that we wanted to touch on, it was about how he related to both his father and how then he related to Pudgy because of that, a kind of emotional thing that came from that.
That his relationship with Pudgy Wudgy was closer to the relationship he had with his father than to, say, his wife or the various women that he'd kind of been touched upon, but really not examined as much as that father-son relationship.
Exactly, yeah. And Frank was married for 20 years, as he says in the film, and got divorced, and then, got Pudgy Wudgy and was able to find a certain partnership with this cat that was beyond just a kind of a business partnership, or just it was beyond just the attention that he got. It was an emotional one. It was kind of a relating to someone and be able to shape someone in his own image in a way, I think. And I mean, it's a complicated relationship, I think. It's not just one thing, and so that's what was really interesting to us as we kind of got further and further into the story. We realized that you can't just label this relationship one thing, or Frank's not just one thing. He is a lot of different things, and that was engaging for us for sure.
Yeah, and on that about how Frank is a lot of things, have people that knew Frank seen the film? Have you heard anything from them in terms of how your portrayal of Frank compares to, I mean, again, local legend, so he's obviously well known in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about that in terms of if people see him differently through the film than they did through his, antics going to a Steelers game?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. Any film that you're going to make is going to be limited in scope at a certain degree, and you're going to represent the character in the way that you see through your own paradigm or whatever. But to your question, we've talked to people that seem to think that it does represent the relationship that Frank and Pudgy had, and that Frank is represented in this film. I think we've heard that people have found it quite emotional. People that know Frank have kind of really connected to the film in that way, and I was really happy to hear that, because I felt like then they were actually connecting to a real person that they know. So through that, I would take that they they were seeing someone that they felt was represented as the person that they know. And there was an emotional connection that Frank had with Pudgy, and I've been heartened as we've screened the film that people are connecting to that emotion and to Frank's life, and he himself is happy with the film and feels like it's a good representation of his relationship with Pudgy and his own life. So I feel good about it.
Right. Well, great. Well, and we're so excited to be able to include the film in our festival, and thank you for flying out and joining us and sitting down with me. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.